This was a slide that we saw for the first time more or less exactly 2 years ago when the IPCC's number 6 report came out. The circles added are actually our own. This is basically where we grow all our food today. As our temperature rises and the soil where we grow our food loses its ability to retain water. This is a recipe for massive geopolitical conflict. It was a massive wake-up call for me and David. And it was really the start of how we thought about what could be done.
And of course, a lot of these regions are actually not growing crops for food. They're growing crops for sustainable plastic, for sustainable fuel. So it influences our economy in a very fundamental way. Coming from an investment background and having had 30 years making money for big money, we've come to realize that if you've got something which isn't working, you have to do something about it. And what isn't working at the moment is the reduction in the oil and the gas and the coal production that we have. And to the story of the fact that we can triple our renewable energy by 2030, even when we do that, we would still be increasing our oil and gas and coal production if our energy demand just continues on its path. Having come to that conclusion, we then started on thinking, how can we actually change this? And the problem is an economic one. Are people going to pay in order to keep oil, gas, and coal in the ground? It leaves us with this sense that we need to create a very different sort of a market. And here it is. And we need to be able to create a market for keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground. So imagine this. Imagine that you're about to go and propose and get married, and you're there going to looking for your wedding rings. What better way than doing that than to know that somehow, in one form or another, a fraction of the money you pay for that special wedding ring goes to keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground. And in doing that, in having something like this, it lets everybody see that this is the thing to do, simply that. And imagine if you're an employer and you want to motivate your employee, and you want to give him a pay rise. What better way to really motivate him than to be able to say to him, look, I will match your pay rise to keep oil, gas, and coal in the ground. And if you can do that, then your employee will feel in whatever work I'm doing, I'm looking after our common home. And I'm creating a better future for my children and for all the people around me. And that can be quite motivating. And Richard, what about you? What do you think about going to a Taylor Swift concert? How would you think of a fraction of that ticket? Because you go to music concerts all the time.
I think it fits very, very well into the overall picture of saying, when I spend my money, I'm going to spend it with those who I think make my life better. Now let's think about that for a second. I want to direct that spending towards those who make my life better. If I am worried about the future, and I certainly am, then I want the recipients of the money I spend on goods and services to actually be committed to taking oil, gas, and coal out of production and keeping it in the ground. So if I'm prepared to spend $100 on an artist I do want to go and see, it's reasonable that a couple of dollars on that ticket gets redirected towards keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground. And that applies to all goods and services I can think of. And the mathematics is actually very, very simple. Every business needs its clients and customers, because otherwise you won't remain in business. And all governments need businesses, because otherwise they will not be able to raise revenue and provide the services that the citizens demand from them. So when all that fits together, and given that our economic model is based on us continuing to consume and spend money on these goods and services, we actually have enormous power as consumers of the world to opt to spend our dollar in the pocket with those companies who are committed to keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground.
And the essence is, by investors knowing that there is such a market, that there is such an interest to keep oil, gas, and coal in the ground through our spending. And as far as government is concerned, what this does is it actually increases our spending, and that's a good thing for our overall economy. But in doing it in a way that actually helps all the regeneration and the healing we need for our planet, because it's spending that actually goes to keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground, as opposed to extracting more of it out to harm and poison our planet and all on it in that form. So this becomes a turning over, flipping of the table, and a new way of actually creating an economy, creating a market that actually moves everything forward, allowing people that choice for them to be able to say, you know what, the money I spend, I can choose who to direct it to. And if I see these people and they are part of the group who are redirecting it to keep oil, gas, and coal in the ground, investors will be able to come in and will be able to say, you know what, these assets, they're worth buying to keep in the ground. And in that way, the innovations and the creativity would come along and say, how can we move and actually help ourselves to go forward? And that's where technology gets the backing into moving everything together. And so it both liberates us and frees us from this tyranny of the climate. So that's our call, to create a market for keeping oil, gas, and coal in the ground.
Indeed. It actually is that simple. Make no mistake about it. It can be done. We have that power.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.